Cowboys are still practicing out in Oxnard. We are back. We made the trip home on Friday afternoon after the show. Got back around 6:30. No issues. Got our bags relatively slowly, but no issues. Well, we weren't flying a Boeing, so that was a good thing. But practice is still going on over the weekend, Bobby Bell.
It is. It's still going on out there in Oxnard, California. Brian Broaddus was out there. We recorded a brand new Love of the Star. He's just loving life, enjoying life without us out there.
By the way, Oxnard, huge miss on your part. I could not find a hat that just said Nard on it. I think it's a huge miss by the Oxnard Chamber of Commerce. Because nards that's such an underused word as nard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you could make an argument that it's a completely overused word, even just hearing it one time there, personally.
Really? You're not?
Nard.
Nard.
You like that
they need
one?
to have a hat that just says nard. Apostrophe nard.
I think I could go without that. You know who is an underused writer?
Your mom?
Nope. Well, I mean, definitely. If you're looking for her to write anything, she's just not going to do it right now. No, Jon Owning, who I was very disappointed was not out at training camp at the same time as us, but Jon Owning over at Pro Football Focus, one of the few things, perfect example of broken clocks and blind squirrels over there at PFF is Jon Owning, who does a very good job. And he was out there for the Friday and Saturday padded practices that we missed, that we were not present for.
Was he at ESPN at one point?
He had been at the Draft Network, I think, at one point. Dallas Morning News. He's been a couple different places. But he had his takeaways from training camp practices that he saw. Number one, and this is from the, we'll start with his takeaways from the Friday practice first. He had 3 takeaways from each practice. And the Friday practice, one of the encouraging notes that he has in here is Mazi Smith is bouncing back, baby.
Oh, baby.
Now, was there anybody you were more disappointed in, Trey Lance aside, anybody you were more disappointed in that we saw out there at training camp than Mazi Smith?
Look, I'll be honest with you. When I go to practice, I just watch the quarterbacks. I'm not doing anything else. I'm sitting there while everybody is on the other field watching the individual drills. I'm literally watching the quarterbacks just throwing the nets.
Just watching their glutes, baby.
Not really that. More calves. Quarterbacks are like Dax. You know, Dax a unit. Below the knee. But
he's all McDice there.
I generally, during practice, just check out the quarterback play.
Well, Jon Owning writes that coming into Friday's practice, Mazi Smith's struggles thus far in camp were highlighted by more than a few media members who have been in attendance. Some have even gone far enough to say that Smith has been Dallas's 3rd best nose tackle through the early days of camp, as many believed rookie Justin Rogers and journeyman Carl Davis were outplaying him. I believe Brian Broaddus is included in that. He said that couldn't be further from the case on Friday, especially against the run. During the fundamental drills to start practice, it was easy to notice that Smith is still working through some of the technical changes required from him since being drafted. When taking on combination and double team blocks, Smith struggles to root his feet into the ground to generate the necessary force to take on these 600-pound blocks. He often gets caught leaning to the side into a double team, which puts him on one foot and unable to absorb and redirect the force of the blockers, leading to him getting displaced out of his gap routinely in 2023. This was not the case at this practice that John saw over the weekend. He felt like things were starting to click into place for him. He was getting run down by the defensive line coach, Jeff Skinnia, who had just gone off on him a few different times at practice. And it's one of those, okay, is that tough love, or is that a you're really feeling like he's dropping the ball? Because they can't afford right now. Just there that it was mentioned, Justin Rogers and Carl Davis. Are those big household names for you?
They are not huge household names. No, they're not.
Nope. And look, that's going to free things up to allow Micah to do more of what he wants to do. One of his other observations from Friday, he says that this isn't your 2023 Dallas Cowboys defense. And look, you can see that out during team period. This is a completely different defense in terms of the way that it's being disguised. The things that they're trying to do schematically, completely different from what Dan Quinn tried. Dan Quinn typically said, all right, I'm going to give you a static look. I'm going to give you exactly what we're going to do because
I can't beat it anyway.
Well, I want guys to fall into a certain place. I want guys to execute their job. I'm going to believe in the talent of our pass rushers, the talent of our guys in the secondary. That's what I'm going to lean on. Mike Zimmer is going to say, all right, I'm going to make it to where DeMarcus Lawrence is dropping into coverage sometimes. Sometimes you're going to have guys showing blitz in the middle, on the A-gap and dropping into coverage. I'm going to have safeties showing blitz and then dropping into coverage, or showing coverage and then blitzing. And that's great. If you can disguise it at all three levels, it's awesome. The problem inherent in that is you need 11 guys to know what's happening on a given play. When it gets that complex, it can be really difficult. That's something that Dan Quinn found, was we need to simplify this as best we can and just say, here's your job, know your job, and execute it. Whereas if it's, hey, you need to be communicating with the guy next to you and acting like you're going to blitz, and you're not really blitzing, you're actually, dropping into a zone coverage, or you're spying here, or you're blitzing, it can get really complicated really fast. And that's something that...
Well, that's a problem.
Well, it's a problem if you have guys who don't communicate well on defense, which has been an issue for them in the past. Next takeaway, the third takeaway he had from Friday's practice, Terrence Steele appears to be rounding back into 2022 form.
This is huge. This is huge. I thought from the beginning that we made too much of the offensive line. The turnaround, because they still, at the end of the day, they still had 2 All-Pros on it. In Smith and Zach. So it's like what do you really, name me the team that has that in the NFL? But it is a weak link unit.
Yep.
And it's the same as defense. If the defense, they're going to pick on the weakest link, and the offenses are, and now with the offensive line, the other team's defensive line is going to pick on the weakest part of the unit. And you need to have, it's much better to have 4 or 5 C+ of offensive linemen than 2 A+ and a D-.
Yeah. Big overarching takeaway here is I think John felt like there were guys that either were performing better this weekend than they had been throughout camp, or he thought some of the issues and the criticisms had been overblown. He was a really big fan of what he saw from Damone Clark. I know that there's a lot of excitement within the Cowboys defensive coaching staff about what Damone Clark's been able to do this year already at training camp, that they feel like he's clicking into place. And another guy he was really excited about was Kalen Carson, who was their 5th-round pick, a guy that the Cowboys reportedly had a 3rd-round grade on, according to Broadus, and is somebody that when John was out there watching him practice, he was like, this could be your next steal in the 5th round at corner, a la Deron Bland. Mm-hmm. And it makes you wonder, is that eventually your replacement for Deron Bland if you start having to pay out a bunch of money to a bunch of different guys and you feel like Bland's contract is coming up and you just can't invest at that level?
I mean, look, you could. I wonder if they will come to a point in the situation where they're like, did we pay the wrong guy?
You could move Diggs in a couple years if you wanted to. If when you're coming up on Bland's contract, you could move Diggs.
I don't know. Would this team do that? Are they, because this organization loves stars, and Diggs is a big name.
He is. He's a big name, and he's a big personality, and he's got a lot of edge, and that's not Bland. Bland is a much more quiet, kind of head down, do your job type of guy. At that point, you may be looking at it and saying they're very similar players. Which personality do I want? Which edge do I want in my secondary?
Well, because and I don't hate the idea of, finding replacements for guys who are about to be paid. That's how you got to do it. That really is how you have to do it in the NFL in the salary cap era. Do you want to go down that road at that position? I mean,
the Kansas City Chiefs had to do it with Tyreek Hill. They reached a point where they had to say, we've got to find.
Is it not easier though to find? If you have a really good quarterback, is it not easier to find a receiver than a corner?
Oh, yeah, I can find a receiver much easier than I can find corner. Absolutely. So forget even just the question of quarterback and who you have throwing the ball to him. If you're just telling me that individual position, I can find a really good receiver easier than I can find a really good corner.
1,000%. You got to look at how they age. How do corners generally age versus receivers? Mm-hmm. Because the moment they start to dip, it's a cliff.
It's like when I dip, you dip, we dip.
Yeah.
Is typically how they go. Speaking of Tyreek Hill, he has a new contract, RJ Choppy.
I saw.
Man, this is
Or does he?
It's the weirdest.
Because it's the same amount of money, right?
Ever see.
Is it not the same amount of money? It's $30 million a year.
It is the same contract. They've just guaranteed more of the deal. That's all they've done. They didn't add years to it, anything else. It's just, hey, you have $60 million left that's total guaranteed on your $90 million deal. Well, we're going to guarantee up another $15 million. And the way this was reported yesterday or over the weekend and look, we all have it. This is not a criticism, so don't mistake it this way.
Is this an accounting trick to free up cap space?
No, it's not even to free up cap space. It's just to do him a solid.
Oh,
it's just to say it's well, and because the biggest sticking point in CeeDee Lamb's deal right now that we've heard is guaranteed money. Mm-hmm. This is bringing him closer to, hey, over the value of your contract now, you're equal to Justin Jefferson in guaranteed money.
for Tyreek.
Pretty much, yeah. It's off by I think it's definitely past it in total, fully guaranteed. Potential guarantees, it's right there with Jefferson now, but he's passed him in fully guaranteed money. So this essentially brings Tyreek Hill's deal to $106 million fully guaranteed over the life of his contract because they've just guaranteed more of it. What's odd about this and the way it was being presented nationally was, hey, this is like as a groundbreaking contract where somebody said this is the first time, this is the most money ever guaranteed in the middle of a deal without years being added to it.
Yeah.
It's like, boy, that sounds like a big favor to Drew Rosenhaus. Like Rosenhaus is saying, this is the way I want you to frame it. And again, this is not me being critical because that exists. You have these relationships, you do people solids in your reporting and things like that. Like, I get that. But it sounded more like a solid because to me, I was like, I don't understand. The Dolphins were not walking away from Tyreek Hill in the next 3 years.
No. Like, isn't their owner known as kind of a jerk?
Yeah, I mean, Stephen Ross, he has been in the past, but this to me is like
this is like a good move by him. Like, this is not something that you would hear him do.
Well, who is like, give me a player on the Cowboys right now that you'd say, regardless of there's no way you're cutting their contract. Throw me Tyler Smith. Tyler Smith's not going anywhere for the next 3 years.
Right.
So it's like we've gone ahead and we've not even given him more money. We've just guaranteed it. It's like, okay, well, what are you guaranteeing? He wasn't going anywhere. Like to me, it seems like a little bit of a phony.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say this is like if Tyreek rips up his knee and there's Achilles and his career's over.
Well, see, it's
injury protection.
The only thing there is I think there are injury guaranteed. Like, I think his contract was already guaranteed for injury. So this just is guaranteed for other factors. Now, does Tyreek Hill anticipate that at some point he's going to start having a decline in terms of his speed because he's 30 now and speed is typically one of the things that goes quicker and he's going to lose that advantage?
He's at the age where you lose it.
Yeah.
That you lose that. Now, you're still fast, but you lose that quickness.
Yeah, and maybe that's what part of this is about for him is I don't know when my decline's coming. I want this guaranteed. And they said, okay, let's do it. It'll be interesting to see how it impacts CeeDee's negotiations. Because from an average annual value, you say, Tyreek Hill just got a new deal, CeeDee. He's still making $30 million a year. How can you get up to Justin Jefferson's money if Tyreek Hill, the number one player in football, I might add, according to NFL Players Chop.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
720, sure. We'll get into it. But CeeDee Lamb, that gives them that argument on that side. But if it's truly about the guaranteed money, this hurts the Cowboys. Because now Tyreek Hill has reset the market in fully guaranteed money. And it's, right. You see this? You need to guarantee more in my deal. This is where we're heading.
That's where we're heading. I mean, that's where they're heading anyway, I'm sure. It was the way it was going. So
pay the man. Just get it done.
This is good for CeeDee Lamb, the Tyreek Hill contract. But it was very confusing because I kept reading. I was like, wait a second. He was already making $30 a year.
Yeah.
This is still making $30 a year. They just gave him more guaranteed money. Good on them. Didn't know that was going to happen from that ownership group.